of our 365-day Bible read. Today we're going to be reading from Deuteronomy chapters 14, 15, and 16. And then we're going to go on to the New Testament and finish Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 24 through 37, and then we'll do the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 13, and we'll also do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapters 14, 15, and 16. Yesterday we read Mark chapter 13, verse 1 through 23, and we're just finishing it up today by reading verse 24 through 37 of Mark chapter 13. And I am following the year reading Bible schedule from esv.org. I did not start from the month that I started these readings on their schedule. I didn't start from April's dates. I started from the beginning of the year on their schedule, meaning I started at January 1st on their reading schedule. And today on their year reading schedule, the date that we're reading for is March 11th. So I started that way from the beginning, from January 1st instead of, April when we started, so that I would be reading from the beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament and reading straight through every day. So, yes. And all right, so we're going to get started now. Deuteronomy chapter 14. Clean and unclean food. You are the sons of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves or make any baldness on your foreheads for the dead. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. And the Lord has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. You shall not eat any abomination. These are the animals you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roebuck, the wild goat, the ibex, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. Every animal that parts the hoof and has the hoof cloven, and chews the cud among the animals you may eat. Yet of those that chew the cud or have the hoof cloven, you shall not eat these: the camel, the hare, and the rock badger, because they chew the cud but do not part the hoof, are unclean for you. And the pig, because it parts the hoof, and the pig, because it parts the hoof but does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. Of all that are in the waters you may eat these. Whatever has fins and scales you may eat, and whatever does not have fins and scales you shall not eat. It is unclean for you. You may eat all clean birds, but these are the ones that you shall not eat: the eagle, the bearded vulture, the black vulture, the kite, the falcon of any kind, every raven of any kind, the ostrich, the night hawk, the seagull, the hawk of any kind, the little owl and the short-eared owl, the barn owl and the tawny owl, the carrion vulture and the cormorant, the stork, the heron of any kind, the hoopoe, and the bat. And all winged insects are unclean for you. They shall not be eaten. All clean winged things you may eat. You shall not eat anything that has died naturally. You may give it to the sojourner who is within your towns, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a people holy to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Tithes. You shall tithe all the yield of your seed that comes from the field year by year, and before the Lord your God, in the place that he will choose to make his name dwell there. You shall eat the tithe of your grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and the firstborn of your herd and flock, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. And if the way is too long for you, so that you are not able to carry the tithe when the Lord your God blesses you, because the place is too far from you, which the Lord your God chooses to set his name there, then you shall turn it into money and bind up the money in your hand, and go to the place that the Lord your God chooses, and spend the money for whatever you desire, oxen or sheep or wine or strong drink, whatever your appetite craves. And you shall eat there before the Lord your God and rejoice, you and your household. And you shall not neglect the Levite who is within your towns, for he has no portion or inheritance with you. At the end of every 3 years you shall bring out all the tithe of your produce in the same year, and lay it up within your towns. And the Levite, because he has no portion or inheritance with you, and the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, who are within your towns, shall come and eat and be filled, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands that you do. All right, so that was Deuteronomy chapter 14, and we're now going to do the Bible study for what we just read, Deuteronomy chapter 14. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 14 Bible study. Hello. Deuteronomy chapter 14 Bible study. What type of animals of the land could the land could the Israelites eat? The people could eat the animals that had both a split hoof and chewed the cud. In general, what type of birds were they not to eat? All the meat or flesh-eating birds were unclean. What type of animals of the water could they eat? The water animals with both fins and scales on them could be eaten by the people. What did the people of Israel do with their tithes at the end of every 3rd year? Every 3rd year, the people stored up tithes in their gates for the Levites, the stranger, the widow, and the orphan. All right, so that was the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 14. We're now going to read Deuteronomy chapter 15 and then do the Bible study, and then read Deuteronomy chapter 16, then the Bible study. Then we'll go on over to the New Testament to finish Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 24 through 37, and then we'll do the Bible study for that. All right, Deuteronomy chapter 15. The sabbatical year. At the end of every 7 years you shall grant and release, and this is the manner of the release. Every creditor shall release what he has lent to his neighbor. He shall not exact it of his neighbor, his brother, because the Lord's release has been proclaimed. Of a foreigner you may exact it, but whatever of yours is with your brother, your hand shall release. But there will be no poor among you, for the Lord will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, if only you will strictly obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all this commandment that I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you, as he promised you, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow, and you shall rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over you. If among you one of your brothers should become poor in any of your towns within your land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother, but you shall open your hand to him and lend him sufficient for his need, whatever it may be. Take care lest there be an unworthy thought in your heart, and you say, the 7th year, the year of release is near, and your eye look grudgingly on your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry to the Lord against you, and you be guilty of sin. You shall give to him freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give to him. Because for this the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all that you undertake. For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in your land. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years, and in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you let him go free from you, you shall not let him go empty-handed. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock, out of your threshing floor, and out of your winepress. As the Lord your God has blessed you, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I command you this today. But if he says to you, I will not go out from you, because he loves you and your household, since he is well off with you, then you shall take an awl and put it through his ear into the door, and he shall be your slave forever. And to your female slave you shall do the same. It shall not seem hard to you when you let him go free from you. For at half the cost of a hired worker he has served you 6 years, so the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. All the firstborn males that are born of your herd and flock you shall dedicate to the Lord your God. You shall do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You shall eat it, you and your household, before the Lord your God, year by year, at the place that the Lord will choose. But if it has any blemish, if it is lame or blind, or has any serious blemish, whatever, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You shall eat it within your towns. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it, as though it were a gazelle or a deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. All right, so that was Deuteronomy chapter 15, and we're now going to do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 15. Deuteronomy chapter 15 Bible study. What did the people of Israel release at the end of every 7th year? A release of all debts was done in the 7th year. What were the Israelites to be careful not to do close to the year of release? They were not to withhold helping the poor and the needy, because the year of release was at hand. And what year were servants released? The 7th year servants were free to go. What were the servants given upon their release? A servant was to be released with plenty of livestock, food, oil, and wine. If the servant did not wish to leave, what action was the master to do? The master would pierce the servant's ear. All right, so that was the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 15. So we're now going to read Deuteronomy chapter 16, and then we'll do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 16. And then we're going to go on over to the New Testament and finish Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 24 through 37. And yesterday we read verse 1 through 23 of Mark chapter 13. So we're just finishing it up today. I am following the Year Reading Bible schedule from esv.org, and they split the books of the New Testament up into 2 days because there's more books of the Old Testament than there is of the New Testament, and they want to be able to stretch the New Testament along so that we'll be able to read both the Old and New Testament every day for this next year. And if they didn't split it up, then we'd be done with the New Testament way before we're done reading the Old Testament. So yes. All right, so Deuteronomy chapter 16, the Passover. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night, and you shall offer the Passover sacrifice to the Lord your God from the flock or the herd, at the place that the Lord will choose to make his name dwell there. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days you shall eat it with unleavened bread, the bread of affliction. For you came out of the land of Egypt in haste, that all the days of your life you may remember the day when you came out of the land of Egypt. No leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory for 7 days, nor shall any of the flesh that you sacrifice on the evening of the first day remain all night until morning. You may not offer the Passover sacrifice within any of your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, but at the place that the Lord your God will choose to make his name dwell in it, there you shall offer the Passover sacrifice in the evening at sunset, at the time you came out of Egypt. And you shall cook it and eat it at the place that the Lord your God will choose. And in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. For 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a solemn assembly to the Lord your God. You shall do no work on it. The Feast of Weeks. You shall count 7 weeks. Begin to count the 7 weeks from the time the sickle is first put to the standing grain. Then you shall keep the Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God with the tribute of a freewill offering from your hand, which you shall give as the Lord your God blesses you. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant and your female servant, the Levite who is within your towns, the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow who are among you, at that place that the Lord your God will choose to make his name dwell there. You shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall be careful to observe these statutes. The Feast of Booths. You shall keep the Feast of Booths 7 days when you have gathered in the produce from your threshing floor and your wine press. You shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant and your female servant, the Levite, the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow who are within your towns. For 7 days you shall keep the feast to the Lord your God at the place that the Lord will choose, because the Lord your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the work of your hands, so that you will be altogether joyful. 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the Lord your God at the place that he will choose. At the feast of unleavened bread, at the feast of weeks, and at the feast of booths, they shall not appear before the Lord empty handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God that he has given you. Justice. You shall appoint judges and officers in all your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show you shall not show partiality, and you shall not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of the righteous. Justice and only justice you shall follow, that you may live and inherit the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Forbidden forms of worship. You shall not plant any tree as an Asherah beside the altar of the Lord your God that you shall make. And you shall not set up a pillar which the Lord your God hates. All right, so that was Deuteronomy chapter 16, and we're now going to do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 16. Deuteronomy chapter 16 Bible study. It's only 3 questions. What ceremony was observed with the feast of unleavened bread? The Passover was observed with the feast of unleavened bread. What 3 feasts were the Israelites to keep? The Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Weeks, Feast of Tabernacles. What were the judges and officers of each tribe to do? The judges and officers of each tribe were to judge the people with just judgment. All right, so that was the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 16. We're now going on over to the New Testament, and we're going to finish Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 24 through 37, and we will do the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 13. Yesterday, we started Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 1 through 23, so we're just finishing it today, and we'll do the Bible study for the entire chapter. I am following the year reading Bible schedule from esv.org, and they split the books of the New Testament up into 2 days, some of the chapters, just so that we can stretch out the New Testament for the entire year. So we'll be able to read both the New Testament and the Old Testament every day for the entire year. There's less books in the New Testament, so if they didn't split it up that way, we'll finish the New Testament way before we finish the Old Testament. So yes. All right, Mark chapter 13, we're starting at verse 24. Okay. The coming of the Son of Man. But in those days after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the 4 winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. The lesson of the fig tree. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. No one knows that day or hour, But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. All right, so that was Mark chapter 13, verse 24 through 37. We're going to do the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 13. Yesterday, we read Mark 13 by reading verse 1 through 23, so we just finished it now today. Okay. Mark chapter 13 Bible study. What would happen to the temple in Jerusalem? The temple would be desecrated and destroyed. What must we endure to be saved? What must we endure to be saved? Those who become believers must bear the persecutions, hatred, resistance, and even the threat of death from non-believers and even family members. What happens if you don't endure these things? If one shrinks from their loyalty to Jesus for fear of what others will say or do, they will forfeit their soul and salvation. What is the abomination that stands where it should not? The abomination is the future destruction and defilement again of the temple. Where did I leave off at? Of the temple at the time of the Antichrist. What were the Jews to do when they saw this abomination? The Jews were to quickly flee the city to safety, not stopping to take anything with them. Why will God shorten this time of tribulation? To save a remnant of Israel, God will shorten this tribulation period. Those who heed the warning will survive. When will Jesus gather his elect? Jesus will gather his elect from the four winds of the earth immediately after the great tribulation. Who knows the time of the end? God is the only one who knows the time of the end. We will know the signs when it gets closer. How do we stay ready for the return of Jesus? We must continue to serve God and live righteously while watching for his return. All right, so that was the Bible study for Mark chapter 13, and our day is complete. So a recap of what we did today from the Old Testament. We read Deuteronomy chapter 14, 15, and 16, and then we did the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapters 14, 15, and 16, and then we went on over to the New Testament and we finished Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 24 through 37. Yesterday we started Mark chapter 13 by reading verse 1 through 23, so we just finished it today, and we just did the Bible study for the entire chapter of Mark chapter 13. So yes, our day 70 is complete. Can you believe it's been 70 days already? No, it doesn't feel like it at all. Like, the time is flying by. So it's going to be a year before we know it. It's been so much going on, and oh my goodness, this year's flying by. Like, I think this is like the fastest year of my life so far. But it's been beautiful, like just opening the Bible every day and just reading it. So If you're on this journey and you've been opening your Bible and reading it with me these past 70 days, then I know there's been positive change in your life, because there's no way that you can open the Bible for 70 straight days and there not be any positive change in your life in different areas of your life. So I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for myself, and we're doing it. We rock. So we are champions of Jesus Christ, and God loves you, and I love you. You are important. You are valuable. You are worthy. You are enough. You are everything, and I love you, and God loves you. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 71. Love you lots. Enjoy your weekend.